Welcome. Today we are going to talk about the movie, All Quiet on the Western Front. The story starts showing a group of soldiers getting killed on the western frontier of the German-French borderline. Their clothing and other belongings are removed from their bodies and returned back, where they are cleaned, repaired and prepped to be used again. For young men, Paul Bäumer, Albert Kropp, Fritz Muller and Ludwig Bem decides to be a part of the military in the early summer of 1917. Matters could have gone differently for Paul Bäumer and others if they had learned about the reality of the situation before enlisting in the military. The officials arrive and delivers an encouraging speech. They talk about being patriotic and virtuous, who in reality were merely misleading impressionable young boys. Paul gets pleased when he receives his uniform, but little does he know that his happiness is short-lived. When he arrived at the Western Front, he immediately becomes aware of the situation on the battlefield. Inside the trenches, Paul becomes friends with Stanislaus Kaczynski. The situation of the troops in the trenches horrifies Paul. We learn that the young boys lack any fighting expertise. Due to a shortage of time, they received no training of any kind. They were simply placed in the middle of the French combat right away. Paul understands the purpose of the order, start collecting, which they frequently mentioned in the trenches. It implies that all of the deceased's badges needs to be removed from the corpses in order to have a record of the deceased soldiers. Inside the trenches, Paul first discovers Ludwig's glasses before coming across his lifeless corpse. Paul's first experience with death comes at that time. Paul gets transferred to Champagne, a French region thereafter. Very little food is supplied on the battlefield there. A goose was once taken from the home of a French farmer by Paul and Kaczynski. It seems as though their concerns had vanished as they eat delicious meat alongside Edin, Kropps, and several others. After a very long time, they eat well. Aside from meals, other rare sights are females, clean sheets for the bed, and new clothes. Kaczynski is illiterate, so Paul reads his letters for him. It seems while the troops are in battle, their families are working hard to make ends meet. In addition to being away from his family, Kaczynski's child had passed away. He tells Paul that he might never be able to return home even after the war. He is aware that he would probably never be able to lead a regular life after witnessing immense brutality, death, and destruction. The search for 60 young soldiers who had been absent since the previous day is assigned to Paul, Kaczynski, Kropps, Edin, and some others. The German government treasures every single person and soldier, and definitely not because they respect their lives, but instead because they are extremely low on troops and supplies. Major von Brixdorf, among the general's most dependable men, gives him regular updates. According to the general, Social Democrats could lead to the destruction of mankind. He has given the German delegation, led by Matthias Erich Berger, an instruction to go to Compiègne in order to negotiate a ceasefire with the French, but he has no desire to sign a peace agreement. To protect his pride and his personal interests, he is willing to offer the life of every single soldier. According to the general, without war, a soldier's life is meaningless. On the other hand, Matthias Erich Berger isn't like that. He understands the ridiculousness of the orders the Germans are giving to their troops. He is attempting to persuade the French as well as the Germans to reach a compromise. Even though he is aware that the French government's terms are impractical, he is nonetheless eager to end the bloodshed. He does not want any more soldiers to suffer. German soldiers who are starving fight because they have no other alternative. The rules are straightforward: kill or be killed. Paul and another French soldier ends up fighting. He ruthlessly wounds the French soldier, acting as if he is driven and unable to comprehend his actions. After a moment of reflection, Paul sees that he has nearly killed someone. Although it is already too late, he begins to tend to his wounds. Paul comes to understand the fact that it isn't his fight. He has no justification for killing an innocent person. He becomes aware that he is a glamorized soldier who has been given an untrue sense of purpose. On November 11, 1918, the Armistice of Compiègne is signed, in which it is agreed that the war would end at 11 a.m. Edin kills himself, while Kropps died during the war. Kaczynski assures Paul that they are the privileged ones since they are still alive. The soldiers are unable to derive any purpose from the war they fought. They mourn the passing of the folks who they had previously shared laughter. Paul and Kat decides to steal a bird from the exact same French landowner once more. Paul enters the barn, but sadly the farmer's younger son shut the door. Kaczynski is instructed to flee for his life by Paul after he is able to escape. The farmer's son chases Kaczynski and then shots him. Imagine how it feels to be a brave soldier to witness the bloodiest battles in war and becoming powerless against the hatred that a young boy is harboring. The general isn't satisfied, so since the peace pact has not officially taken effect, he orders the forces to attack Ladier despite the ceasefire. Paul's luck runs out this time as he can't withstand the physical demands of battle. Like him, one other young soldier is in charge of gathering badges. In the hopes that one day the young kid would see that fighting is pointless, Paul sacrifices his own life to save the boys. Paul never believed that he would be immortalized by sacrificing his life for his country. All he wanted was a better world. Tragically, a fair world was only going to exist in people's imagination as long as men having inflated egos and false pride held the reins of power. Let's close it here for today. We hope you enjoyed the story. Turn on the notification bell and stay tuned for another fresh story recap. See you soon.